The bright lights of the tech conference dazzled me as I stood at the edge of the crowd, the hum of conversations blending with the faint smell of coffee and polished metal. I could feel the weight of my own presence, yet it felt like nobody truly saw me. My heart raced not from excitement but from the underlying tension of being underestimated. Was I just another face in the tech world, or did I have something more to offer? "Look at Anna, always tinkering with her gadgets," one of my so-called friends had quipped at the dinner party last week, laughter erupting around the table. The memory stung, a reminder of how they dismissed my expertise, oblivious to the empire I had built behind the scenes. Each chuckle felt like a knife twisting in my gut, and I had forced a smile, pretending their words didn't cut deep. I clenched my fists, the cool metal of my smartwatch grounding me in the present. I was no mere techie. I had built an $870 million firewall, yet here I was, struggling for validation among friends who saw me as a punchline. "I will not be reduced to a punchline," I whispered to myself, the words echoing in my mind like a mantra. It was time to show them the truth behind my facade. The atmosphere shifted as I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating me. A familiar mix of confusion and determination surged within. As I prepared to reveal my firewall, I could feel the air thickening with anticipation. Would they finally see me? Would they understand? The stakes were high, and I was ready to reclaim my narrative. With a deep breath, I glanced over the crowd, searching for familiar faces. My best friend Lily stood in the front row, her encouraging nod giving me a sliver of hope. I could almost hear her voice, reminding me to trust my instincts. In that moment, I resolved to turn the tide. This was my chance to prove my worth, to shift the perception that had haunted me for too long. I stepped forward, ready to unveil not just my firewall, but the layers of betrayal that would soon unravel my world. As I began to speak, I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me, a palpable tension hanging in the air. This was more than just a presentation. It was a declaration of my identity, a challenge to their preconceived notions. I was determined not just to reveal my success, but to lay bare the vulnerabilities that came with it. The time for silence was over, and I was ready to embrace the chaos that would follow. The air in my office felt electric, charged with the frenetic energy of the tech world that surrounded me. Sunlight filtered through the glass walls, casting sharp angles of light across my desk cluttered with gadgets and coffee cups. I looked up from my laptop, the hum of the bustling office a constant reminder of the stakes at play. My colleagues moved about, their voices a blend of excitement and anxiety, each one focused on their own projects, yet I felt like an outsider peering in. As I sipped my lukewarm coffee, I recalled the last baby shower I attended, filled with pastel decorations and laughter. It was there that the dismissive comments began, casual jabs that cut deeper than they realized. "Oh, Anna, you're just a techie. What do you know about real life?" The laughter that followed was lighthearted, but it echoed in my mind like a taunt. I had tried to brush it off, but the sting lingered, a reminder of my place in their world. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the memory. I had fought hard to carve a niche for myself in this male-dominated industry, but moments like that made me question my worth. The scent of fresh pastries wafted from the break room, mingling with the sharp aroma of burnt coffee. I could hear the clinking of mugs and the rustle of papers, but it all felt distant, as if I were watching a scene unfold from behind a glass barrier. Then there was Lisa, my best friend and my fiercest supporter. She had been there through thick and thin, yet even she seemed to hesitate at times. I could see her across the room, engaged in conversation, her laughter genuine but laced with an undertone of concern. It made me wonder if she, too, doubted my decisions. Did she still believe in me, or was I just a punchline to her? That night, the dinner party loomed ahead, and I felt a knot of anxiety twist in my stomach. I wanted to show them that I was more than just a techie. I was a force to be reckoned with. As I prepared, I envisioned myself revealing the truth of my $870 million firewall, the culmination of years of hard work. This was my chance to shift the narrative, to transform their dismissive attitudes into respect. But as I dressed, I couldn't shake the doubt that crept in. Would they see me as I truly was, or would I always be the girl who couldn't quite fit in? I stepped out into the evening, the cool air a sharp contrast to the warmth of my apartment. The city lights twinkled like stars, a reminder of the dreams I held close. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the night ahead. It was time to face my friends, to prove to them that I was more than just a techie. I was ready to reclaim my narrative, even if it meant confronting their skepticism head-on. The dim light of the cafe cast long shadows across the small table where I sat, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup as I waited for Lisa. The usual buzz of conversation felt muted, the air thick with tension and the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. I replayed the moment, my friends laughing at my expense, dismissing my achievements as mere tech jargon. The sting of their words echoed in my mind, each one a reminder of how little they understood the depths of my reality. When Lisa finally arrived, her expression was a mix of concern and confusion. She slid into the seat opposite me, her brow furrowed. "Anna, what happened back there? You seemed different. It was as if you were fighting a battle all alone." Her voice was soft, but the weight of her inquiry felt like a spotlight on my darkest fears. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a mixture of anger and humiliation. Different. "They laughed at me, Lisa. I wanted to share my success, but instead I felt like a joke. Like I was just some techie in their eyes, not someone who had built something worth millions," I snapped, my fingers tightening around the cup. I looked out the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. Memories flooded back, moments when I had trusted them, shared my dreams, and even celebrated their successes. Now it all felt like a cruel mirage. "I thought we were friends, but now I see they only wanted to be associated with my success, not me," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. "You're letting them get to you, Anna. They don't know what you've sacrificed to get here. You can't let their ignorance define you." Her words were a lifeline thrown into my turbulent sea of thoughts, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. "I just want answers, Lisa. How could they betray me so easily? I need to confront them, to demand the truth. I can't let this slide." My heart raced at the thought of facing them, the adrenaline coursing through my veins like wildfire. The cafe felt suffocating, the air thick with the scent of coffee and regret. "Are you sure that's the right move? You know how they can twist things around. What if they deny everything?" she cautioned, a hint of fear creeping into her voice. I could see the worry etched across her features, but I had reached my breaking point. No more denial. I deserve to know why they did this. I won't let them dismiss me again. "This ends with me standing my ground," I declared, my resolve hardening like steel. Lisa nodded slowly, the weight of my determination palpable in the air between us. As I prepared to face my betrayers, I felt the tide of anger shift within me, fueling my determination. The cafe faded away, replaced by the looming confrontation ahead. I could almost hear their voices, the laughter that had once felt warm now stripped of its comfort, echoing in my mind. I inhaled deeply, steeling myself for what was to come. The confrontation would be my chance to reclaim the narrative of my life. I would no longer be the punchline of their jokes. I would take control and demand the respect I had always deserved. As I left the cafe, the rain poured down, each drop a reminder of the storm I was about to unleash. I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins, propelling me forward into the unknown. The emotions raged within me, anger, betrayal, and a fierce resolve to confront my friends and demand answers. This was not just about me, it was about reclaiming my truth and standing up against the injustice I had faced. I would not walk away from this without a fight. The air was thick with tension as I entered the conference room for what was meant to be a reconciliation meeting. The long table, typically a place for collaboration, now felt like a battleground, the silence almost deafening. I could see familiar faces twisted in anger and disbelief, their eyes like daggers aimed at me. I clenched my fists under the table, the cool surface grounding me against the rising tide of anxiety. Just yesterday I had hoped to mend the fractures in our team, but now, those plans felt like a cruel joke. My resolve wavered as I recalled the laughter we once shared, now replaced by this palpable animosity. "Anna, do you even understand the damage you've done?" Lisa's voice cut through the silence, sharp and accusatory. My best friend, the one person I thought would stand by me, now stood as a harsh reminder of my failures. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and scratchy, and forced myself to meet her gaze. "I thought we could work through this, Lisa," I replied, my voice trembling slightly despite my effort to sound confident. "We need to focus on solutions, not dwell on the past." I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing the weight of my decisions. The memories of our once unbreakable bond felt like shadows creeping in the corners of the room, haunting me. "Solutions? You mean more cuts, more pain?" she shot back, her frustration evident. The way she leaned forward, hands on the table, spoke volumes about her disappointment. I desperately searched for words that could bridge the chasm that had formed between us, but they eluded me. I felt a pang of despair as I realized how alone I truly was in this moment. As the discussion devolved into accusations and blame, I felt the chaos enveloping me like a thick fog. My breath quickened, and I could almost hear my pulse in my ears. I had tried to be the leader they needed, but instead I had become their enemy. I yearned to regain control, to steer the conversation back to what mattered, but each attempt was met with more hostility. Then came the news that would shatter what little hope I had left. David, the head of operations, stood up, his face pale. "We've just received word from compliance. The cuts you implemented have led to a $7.3 million penalty for failing to meet our client commitments." "This is on you, Anna," the words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt the room spin slightly, the walls closing in, and for a brief moment I couldn't catch my breath. "Are you serious?" I managed to whisper, my mind racing. I had known there would be consequences, but this was something else entirely. My stomach churned, and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks as shame washed over me. The realization that my decisions had real-world repercussions struck me like a physical blow. "This ends with you," Lisa muttered, her voice low but filled with venom. I could see the betrayal etched on her face, her disappointment transforming into something darker. The weight of her words settled on my shoulders, a reminder that I had not only lost my friends but had also jeopardized my career and integrity. As the meeting fell apart around me, I felt a wave of determination break through my despair. I had to find a way to turn this chaos into an opportunity. The stakes were higher than ever, and I needed to strategize my next move. I couldn't afford to drown in this turmoil. I had to navigate through it and come out stronger on the other side. My resolve hardened like steel, igniting a spark of clarity amid the chaos. What had begun as a meeting of reconciliation would now become a pivotal point in my fight for redemption. As I left the room, the whispers of my colleagues followed me, a haunting reminder of my failures. But amidst the despair, I felt the ember of a plan forming in my mind. I was not finished yet. I would reclaim my life and expose the betrayal that had turned my world upside down. The fight was far from over. The air was thick with anticipation as I sat across from my former friends at the long, polished table in the conference room. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, illuminating the tension etched on their faces. I could sense the weight of their skepticism, a palpable barrier that seemed to rise with each passing moment. My palms were clammy against the cool surface of the table, the smoothness a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. Memories of laughter shared and victories celebrated flickered through my mind, mocking the distance that now separated us. I leaned forward, my heart racing, eager to bridge the gap that had widened since the fallout. "I know we've faced challenges, but I believe we can find a way to move forward together," I said, injecting a note of hope into my voice. The silence that followed felt deafening, heavy with unspoken doubts. I glanced around the room, noticing Lisa's eyes narrowed in disbelief, her lips pressed into a tight line. "Anna, you can't just expect us to forget what happened," she replied, her voice sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. The sting of her words echoed in my chest, a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our bond. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, frustration mingling with sorrow. I had hoped for an olive branch, but instead I was met with resistance. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "I'm not asking you to forget, but to consider the possibility of rebuilding what we had. We owe it to ourselves and the team to try," I insisted, my voice rising slightly in intensity. The room was silent, yet I could hear the distant hum of the city outside, a stark reminder of the world moving on without us. As I spoke, I felt a flicker of resolve igniting within me. This was my chance to reclaim not only my place in their hearts but also my sense of purpose. "Let's discuss a plan to address the issues we're facing. We can strategize together, share our insights, and find solutions that benefit everyone," I proposed, hoping to spark a glimmer of enthusiasm. But instead I was met with downcast eyes and hesitant nods, the atmosphere thickening like fog. "What's the point, Anna? It just feels like a futile exercise at this stage," one of my colleagues muttered, his voice laced with resignation. The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud, and I felt a fresh wave of disappointment wash over me. I had envisioned a collaborative effort, yet it seemed like hope was slipping through my fingers like sand. The meeting continued, but my attempts at reconciliation felt increasingly futile. I could see the walls rising higher, each word I spoke met with an avalanche of doubt. As I left the conference room, I felt the burden of their disappointment pressing down on my shoulders. My heart ached, not just for the friendships I had lost, but for the team I had once led with pride. I had wanted to mend the rift, but the deeper I tried to reach out, the more they recoiled. In the quiet of my office, I reflected on the meeting, my heart heavy with regret. I had aimed for peace, yet the reality was stark. The wounds ran deep, and trust was a fragile construct. I realized then that I had to shift my focus. It was time to prepare for the next steps, to gather my strength and strategize in a way that would not only protect my interests but also consider the fragile dynamics at play. I was ready to fight for what I believed in, even if it meant facing the rising tide of conflict alone. The air crackled with tension as I stood in the dimly lit conference room, the walls closing in around me like a vice, suffocating my thoughts. My colleagues' faces, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights, reflected a mixture of anger and disbelief. It was a moment I had both dreaded and anticipated, the culmination of my unraveling, a confrontation that would change everything. I had gathered the courage to face my betrayers, but the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. "You think this is a joke, Anna? You've put us all at risk," Lisa's voice cut through the silence like a knife, her eyes blazing with fury. I felt the heat of shame wash over me, but I wouldn't back down. I steeled my resolve, standing taller against the wave of accusations. This was my moment to reclaim my narrative, to confront the betrayal that had shattered my trust. I'm not the villain here. You all dismissed my concerns, laughed at my ambitions, and now you act as if I was the one who betrayed you. My voice trembled with a mix of fear and anger, emotions clashing within me like a storm. Memories of laughter shared over drinks felt like specters haunting me, mocking the present reality. I took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the conference table beneath my palms, grounding me as I prepared for the confrontation. You think you can just brush this under the rug? You need to face the truth. David chimed in, his disappointment palpable. His words struck me harder than any blow. The realization that the very people I had sought to protect were now my accusers ignited a fire within me. This was not just about me. This was about justice, about reclaiming my life from the ashes of betrayal. With newfound determination, I stepped closer to the table, my heart pounding in my chest. I won't let you define my worth. I have built something incredible, and I will not be reduced to a punchline. This ends with me taking action. The room fell silent, my declaration hanging in the air like a challenge. I could see the flicker of surprise in their eyes, the moment of realization dawning upon them. The adrenaline surged through me, pushing away the remnants of doubt that clung to my mind. I had taken the first step towards revenge, and I knew there was no turning back. I would gather evidence, allies, and every resource at my disposal to dismantle the web of deceit that had ensnared me. The path to justice was fraught with peril, but I was ready to embrace the chaos that lay ahead. As I left the conference room, determination coursed through my veins like wildfire. I could feel the weight of my choices shifting, transforming into a resolve that would guide me through the darkness. I had a plan forming in my mind, one that would not only expose the traitors but also reclaim my rightful place in a world that had tried to silence me. My journey of revenge had begun, and I was prepared to fight for everything I had lost. In the dimly lit confines of my home office, I felt the weight of my decisions pressing heavily upon my shoulders. The walls seemed to close in around me, the sterile white paint reflecting a cold light that matched the chill in my heart. I had gathered enough evidence to expose the betrayal that had been woven into my life by those I once trusted. It was time to strategize. I spread out the documents across my desk, the papers crinkling under the pressure of my trembling hands. Each sheet held a piece of the puzzle, a testament to the deceit I had uncovered. The faint scent of burnt coffee lingered in the air, a reminder of my restless nights spent piecing together the fragments of this treachery. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, igniting a fire of determination. This has to be flawless, I muttered to myself, my voice barely above a whisper. I envisioned the faces of my betrayers, their smirks vanishing as I revealed the truth. I could almost hear their disbelief echoing in the room, a sweet melody to counter the bitterness that had festered for too long. I needed allies, people who believed in my cause, and I knew the first step would be to reach out to Lisa. I picked up my phone, the weight of it feeling reassuring in my hand. My fingers hesitated over her contact, recalling the disappointment etched on her face during our last encounter, but I had to push past that. We had shared too much to let betrayal sever our bond. As I drafted the message, my heart raced with anticipation. I would propose a meeting to discuss our next steps, a chance for her to understand the depth of my plans. I wanted her to see that this was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life and restoring what had been broken. I pressed send, my breath catching in my throat as I felt the gravity of my intentions. I closed my eyes for a moment, allowing the visions of success to wash over me. This would not be a chaotic scramble for vengeance, it would be a calculated execution of justice. The stakes were high, but I was ready to risk it all. The taste of determination lingered on my tongue, and I knew I was on the precipice of something significant. This was my moment to turn the tide, and I would not let fear dictate my actions any longer. The atmosphere in the high-rise conference room was electric, charged with an unspoken tension that clung to the air like static. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the faces of my betrayers, their expressions a mix of arrogance and disdain. I stood at the head of the long, glossy table, my palms slick against the cool surface, as I prepared to lay bare the truth that had been hidden in shadows for far too long. The scent of polished wood mingled with the faint tang of anxiety, creating an almost suffocating ambience that mirrored my racing heart. As I cleared my throat, I could feel the weight of their gazes, each one an accusation that stung more than I cared to admit. "You think you can undermine me and walk away unscathed?" I began, my voice steady despite the tremor of adrenaline coursing through my veins. Memories of laughter shared in this very room echoed in my mind. Now that laughter felt like a bitter mockery. I remembered the casual dismissals, the feigned camaraderie, and I felt a surge of righteous anger build within me. "Anna, we didn't mean to," one of them started, but I cut him off sharply, feeling the tide of my resolve rise. "Don't try to spin this. I've uncovered everything: the emails, the plans to sabotage my firewall, the betrayal that runs deeper than any of you care to admit." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth, and I could see the color drain from their faces as the realization of their impending exposure settled in. I took a step forward, the polished floor beneath my feet reflecting the intensity of my determination. "You thought I wouldn't find out, that I would remain a pawn in your twisted game. This ends with me standing here, taking back my power and reclaiming my worth." I could feel the rush of blood in my ears, the adrenaline sharpening my focus as I prepared for their reactions. Then the silence shattered like glass when one of them, a former ally turned adversary, sprang from his seat. "You will regret this, Anna. You think you can just expose us. You don't know what you're dealing with." His voice was laced with venom and the threat hung ominously in the air, but it only fueled my resolve. I had spent too long in the shadows, too long allowing their lies to dictate my worth. "You may think you hold the cards, but the truth is my weapon," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I've gathered enough evidence to not only clear my name but to ensure that you face the consequences of your actions. Your days of manipulating the narrative are over." The room felt charged, each breath a testament to the battle that had been waged within me, and I could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes. As I presented the damning evidence, the tension in the room shifted. Gasps echoed, and disbelief washed over their faces like a tide. The atmosphere transformed from one of defiance to a palpable fear, and I savored that shift. I had fought hard to reclaim not just my place but my dignity, and in that moment I felt a surge of triumph. But as I finished, a part of me knew this confrontation was just the beginning. The fight for my future was far from over, and while I had exposed their treachery, the fallout would ripple through my life in ways I couldn't yet anticipate. Yet, standing there, emboldened by the truth, I knew I was ready to face whatever would come next. I had taken back my narrative, and this was my moment, a moment of clarity and strength, a turning point that would define not just my career but my very essence. The aftermath of my confrontation with the board felt surreal, as if I had stepped into a world where clarity and chaos danced a delicate ballet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the now quiet boardroom where moments before, tensions had erupted like a storm. I sat at the table, my heart still racing from the intensity of the discussions, but a flicker of hope ignited within me. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the faintest hint of coffee, remnants of the long hours we had all invested in trying to salvage our future. As I gathered my things, I noticed the subtle shift in my colleagues' demeanor. The once hardened expressions had softened, and murmurs of tentative agreement filled the space where anger had thrived just moments before. David approached me, his face a mixture of pride and relief. "You did well, Anna. They're starting to see the leader you can be," he said, his voice low but steady, reassuring me that my efforts were beginning to bear fruit. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past still heavy on my shoulders, but now it felt manageable. I had laid bare my vulnerabilities and acknowledged my missteps. It was a gamble, but one that seemed to be paying off. I recalled Lisa's piercing words from earlier, the reminder of how I had put profits over people, and it fueled my determination to rebuild our relationships, not just with words but with genuine actions. Later that day, I found myself at a cafe, the familiar ambience now a comforting embrace. I had invited my team to join me, hoping to create a space for open dialogue. As they trickled in, I felt a surge of anxiety mixed with anticipation. Would they trust me again? Would they allow me to guide us forward? The aroma of fresh pastries filled the air, mingling with the scent of brewing coffee, a symphony of warmth that contrasted with the lingering chill of betrayal. As we sat together, I listened intently to their concerns, their frustrations spilling forth like a dam bursting. Each voice was a thread in the tapestry of our team, and I was determined to weave them back together. I shared my vision, not just for the company but for us as a collective, emphasizing that we could rise from the ashes of my mistakes. Their responses were cautious but hopeful, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over me. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in our office shifted. The laughter that had once felt distant began to return, echoing through the hallways as we worked together to mend the fractures I had caused. I implemented regular check-ins, inviting feedback and fostering an environment where everyone felt valued. The camaraderie we had lost was slowly being rebuilt, brick by brick, and with each small victory, I felt a sense of closure inching closer. Reflecting on the journey, I realized that the path to redemption was not about erasing the past, but about learning from it. I had transformed my ambition into a force for good, one that prioritized the well-being of my team and the integrity of our mission. The stakes had been high and I had come dangerously close to losing everything, but in facing the consequences of my actions, I had forged a new path forward, one filled with hope and resilience. I smiled to myself, knowing that while the scars of betrayal would always linger, they would no longer define me. Instead, they would serve as a reminder of the strength that comes from vulnerability and the power of rebuilding trust. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue across my living room. I sat on the edge of my couch, the familiar fabric soft beneath my fingertips, grounding me in the moment. The echoes of my journey reverberated in my mind, the battles fought, the trust rebuilt, and the lessons learned. Each breath I took felt lighter, as if the weight of my past decisions had finally begun to lift. I reflected on the faces of my colleagues, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism,